Welcome back to the Present Fathers podcast. In this episode, we interview one of our own, my co-host, Dustin Burnham. Dustin is our token Florida man, but on top of that, he is a proud husband and father to his young son. Dustin's upbringing was unique, to say the least, quite different than most. He grew up without a dad, and the details are very strange around that. We'll get into the episode and the details, but what really mattered is that he struggled in many ways because he didn't have this influence in his life. In this episode, we dive headfirst into Dustin's stories, and we extract valuable lessons from his experience on becoming a man as well as fatherhood. Dustin is one of the most honest, genuine, and positive people I have ever known in my life. I'm truly honored to call him one of my closest friends, and I'm excited and privileged to present to you Dustin Burnham. Dustin, welcome to the Present Fathers podcast. It's great to have you as a guest finally.
Thank you, guys. This means so much.
This is your first time ever, right?
Yeah, I've been begging you for months to let me on the
Super
podcast.
Cool, dude.
And you really were resistant at first because I'm not that interesting, but you finally said, "All right, we'll reconsider." So
yeah, we caved.
Well, it was a generous.
It's also because you have like 100 pounds on me and threatened to crush me, but
yeah, I'll crush you if you don't let me talk on the podcast.
Now, in all seriousness, we are continuing our kind of trend here where we're interviewing ourselves to share our stories, and so today is Dustin. Before we start, Dustin, I just want to say that you are an awesome member of the podcast. We all love you, and you have such a huge laugh and just this boisterous personality that's very infectious. And you're a good yin to my yang because I'm very serious all the time, and you help lighten me up and stuff. So I appreciate having you as a close friend, and I'm very excited to highlight you and let you share your story. And I think just prefacing for the audience here, Dustin's story, I think, is something that a lot of guys across the country can relate to. Not having an engaged father in your life and the struggles that can create growing up. And so even if you had a good father, raises awareness for you to maybe have some empathy for people who had this upbringing. So anyway, without further ado, Dustin, let's start. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about your family first, and then we'll kind of go back into childhood and get going from there.
Great. Yeah. So I think I was the only child among all of you guys. You all had brothers, and I did not. So it was interesting growing up with just my mom and I. I had lots of cousins and friends and other people around, but as far as the primary family unit, it was just the two of us. So we were extremely close. So I still consider my mom one of my best friends, and it was a really crucial part of my life. She's kind of an interesting person because I guess it was more common back then, but now not as many women structure their lives around their children. And my mom 100% did. All the decisions she made were with me in mind, considering my welfare. And I'm so thankful for that. I'm the person that I am because I had that experience with her. So my father was not around, and some of that may have been, some compensation. He was married to another woman. So I met my father a few times and spent some time with him. I talked to him on the phone, but he was never a part of the household. It was always just my mom and I. And in fact, when my mom got pregnant, she left the state that she was living in and moved to Florida. I think she was young, maybe concerned about judgment from her parents. And so she wanted to get away from it. And probably to get away from him, maybe some of that going on. And so she took off, and I ended up growing up in Florida. And very quickly, that relationship was mended. I was the only grandchild. All my other cousins are quite a bit younger. So I think my grandfather, who I'm extremely close with now, recognized that he didn't want to lose that relationship with me. And so he and my grandmother quickly repaired that relationship, and I've been very close to them since then. So I was born at the same hospital where I did my first anesthesia rotation. So that was really interesting. So Morton Plant Hospital in Tampa, Florida. So when I rotated there 31 years later, I got to meet my obstetrician. That was really cool. I got to chat with him and say, "Hey, thanks
That's a small world, man."
Isn't that weird? Yeah. So I said, "Thanks for pulling me out of my mom." That's strong work. So that was a really
the nurses
interesting.
Did it. Let's calm down.
Well, that's fair. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
If he hears this, I hope he doesn't kill me.
Yeah. Sorry. I think he's retired by now, but
okay.
Yeah. So, growing up as a Florida boy, I love the beach. I'm probably going to have skin cancer when I'm older because I never wore any sunblock when I was a kid. I was on the beach 12 hours a day. I'm a little paler now, but I was very dark as a young boy. I think most people thought I was a different race because I just got so much sun all the time. I was constantly playing on the beach. I was outside. I would spend time indoors. I liked reading and things like that. But most of my time was spent outdoors. I absolutely loved it. And I had a mother who, again, she did work, but because my grandfather helped her and my father was very good about helping us out financially. So she didn't have to work full time. And so I think that's why my childhood coming from a single parent household was so different from how most households are, because the financial component is a key part of being a father. It's not the only thing. A lot of us as dads go, well, I go to work, so I don't have to do anything else. That's not true. You've got a lot more that you have to do. But he did take care of that financial aspect. So I was able to live in a home. I had a stable home from age 5 until 18. My mom only had to work, 10 to 20 hours a week, which, I mean, considering how engaged she was, is probably a lot more time that I got than most stay-at-home moms. I mean, she seriously was, I can't say enough about what an amazing engaged mother she was. And I don't even think it was something she did on purpose. It just, a lot of that really came naturally to her. So, she would read to me 2-3 hours a day. And to this day, I'm a very verbal person, and I can thank her for that. It, it really makes a difference. And just one parent can't make up for both, but she did her best and she did a really great job. So Mom, thank you for everything you did on that end.
I'm trying to figure out like how you're so big, because your mom is probably one of the smallest people I've ever met in my life.
My mom
few people on this earth make me feel like a giant, and I definitely felt close to that meeting her for the first time. But
my mom is 5'3" and about 100 pounds soaking wet. One of her favorite expressions
and you're
is
like 6'4".
6'4", 220. Yep. So one of her favorite expressions is, I can't believe you came out of me.
Yeah, that's got to be a little bit weird. Yeah. All right, that'll be for a mom's podcast. Well, let's get back to
exactly.
No, just teasing. So at what age did you figure out like the whole situation, or in terms of like the fact that, your parents weren't married and
that was
your
different.
Mom was kind of the other woman, and it's a very different situation that most people don't have that experience. So when did you find out, and how did that change the way you viewed like what family meant or any of that kind of stuff?
So my mom kind of gradually gave me more and more information. Something that I can thank her for. That again, we talked about the emotional incest situation. We didn't have that. She did an incredible job. I've never heard a bad thing about my father in the 40 years that I've been alive.
That's good.
Nothing but positive. He wasn't able to be around, but we're going to do everything we can to spend time with him. And he's a great man. And that makes a difference when you're 10. I mean, a lot of parents divorced, not together, they have really tough relationships, or maybe the dad was kind of a bad dude, so the mom says, yeah, your dad's in jail. He wasn't that great of a guy. I mean, I don't know what those moms, that's a tough situation, how much honesty to portray. In my case, my mom was nothing but positive, about my father. And so I would talk to him on the phone. I would see him during the summers. I would spend a day or two with him. So I knew who he was. I was familiar with him. And it's funny, he's only 5'9". He's not a very large man either. So I don't know where I look exactly like him. I'm definitely his kid.
That's strange.
He's like a miniature version of me. So I don't know how that transpired. I must have a very tall uncle, somewhere back in the genes. But he, great guy, worked. He died a couple of years ago, probably 90 hours a week, just nonstop, like 6 a.m. to like 9 p.m., like every day. And, I never had the opportunity to really get him to open up to me. Most of our conversations were surface, type stuff. And, I don't know if he just really loved his work. He had his own business and he was just really passionate about it. Or if maybe he didn't like his family that much and he was avoiding that. I really don't know the answer to that. And I haven't met that side of my family. I may at some point, but they're much older than me. My dad was 30 years older than my mom. So all my half brothers and sisters, I don't know exactly what's on the side of the family. They're in their, I think 60s. So they're quite a bit older. So they'd be more like uncles and aunts, I think.
Right.
But, so I had enough of a relationship with him to know that he was a hard worker. He's a good person. I have a lot of respect for him. He made a lot of great decisions in his life, and that means a lot. Again, for a young boy, seeing that and knowing, okay, my dad's not a deadbeat. He has other stuff going on. I think the whole concept of like your mom's not married to your dad, all that kind of stuff, unfortunately, was probably like schoolyard bully stuff where I kind of learned the relevance of that. When I was 8 or 9, I had a lot of kids that called me a bastard. That really like harped on that and kind of used that as an opportunity to, try to hurt me. And, at the time, I don't think it bothered me that much. It's hard to say. Of all the things that bothered me from school, from being bullied, that wasn't it. I think, thankfully I grew up in a time where it wasn't quite that big of a deal. I had a lot of friends, who also had single parents. And I genuinely don't believe that I attached a lot of my value as a person and meaning to a father being around. And maybe that was a coping mechanism to some extent, saying, well, I don't have this, so I'm not going to value it all that much. And I think I went through a period where I was concerned that I didn't have a great model for what a great marriage should be like. And so maybe marriage wasn't for me, maybe that wasn't the kind of thing that I wanted to do, but I had great relationships with women. I had healthy long-term relationships, and I knew that that's something that I wanted eventually, was to get married. And then when I met Kim, I realized, okay, yeah, I definitely want to have kids. She's a great mom. She will be a great mom. This is someone I want to be, I want to be with.
So let's jump into that then. So graduate, all that kind of stuff. When did you meet Kim? How'd that go? How'd you guys start dating and all that? Let's get to that point of your life. Hey there. We hope you're enjoying this episode of the Present Fathers Podcast. Our mission is to reach as many men as possible and equip them to be excellent family leaders. We believe that by inspiring and equipping men, we can change bloodlines and positively impact our culture. You can join us on this mission and partner with us today by doing one of two things. First, go to your favorite podcast platform, whether that's YouTube videos or Apple or Spotify, Google, etc., and leave us a review. The way the algorithm works is that it really values reviews, and this helps promote our stories to get them out to more people. The second way you can help is by sharing your favorite episodes with friends and family. Help us get the word out so that we can make a difference in our culture. Thank you for watching, and we hope that you join us in our mission to change lives.
Yeah, so I went to school in Chapel Hill. I talk about the Tar Heels all the time. I love those guys. And Kim's she went to Georgia Tech, so she's a Bumblebee. And so we have that ACC rivalry going on. I was a personal trainer for 10 years before I started doing anesthesia, and I absolutely loved it. I took, I think, 25 different certifications at all kinds of lifestyle coaching, fitness, yoga, tennis, everything you can imagine. I was just wanted to soak it up. I loved fitness. I lived at the gym. That's all I did was, focus on that stuff. When I had this big goal of the 300, 400, 500. So 3, 4, 5, 300 bench, 400 squat, 500 deadlift. And it was actually after I met Kim, and she got me on a better diet and upped my calories by about 2,000 a day. I was probably eating about 1,500, 2,000 calories, not even close to enough, and jumped up to I was broke, man. Calories are expensive. And so jumped it up to about 4,000 calories a day. And imagine, I got a lot stronger very quickly.
Yeah, figure. You double your calorie count, you can put on muscle.
Exactly, yeah.
Especially with your 6'4" frame.
Yeah.
Are you 6'4"? I don't want to misquote your height here.
Yeah, about 6'4". Yeah, just a little bit taller than Justin.
Real short
Burnham,
little
but
guy.
Who's counting?
Yeah.
I mean, not that much taller. Just like just enough.
I can hit a punching bag.
See, he's got to take it there. Why has he got to do that?
Okay, we'll pause on that. We'll get to that later about things you didn't learn. But
right.
Let's keep going about meeting Kim and as your relationship grew.
And so one of the last fitness certifications I took was my CrossFit certification. I was really early to CrossFit. I got my L1. I met some really famous people, like the inventor of the kipping pull-up, all kinds of stuff. It was an incredible experience. But I wasn't very good at jumping rope. And so for CrossFitters, they have to be great at double unders, which is where you have the rope go under your feet twice. Boom, 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 boom. And so I walked outside. I was actually planning to jump rope. and it's the middle of winter, and I see this person. I didn't know what she looked like from behind. Although she did have a nice behind, so that was there was that element to it. But that's neither here nor there.
Love at first sight.
Yeah.
The most romantic tale of all tales.
I hate to see you go, but I love to watch you leave. So anyway, I walk outside, and I see this person just crushing double unders, just through, 30, 40, 50 at a time, no problem. I hear this, just like intense, like death metal music, coming out of her headphones. And I mean, now I think they'd call me a crazy person for tapping someone on the shoulder, right, who had headphones on to talk to her. But it was a little, 10, 15 years ago, you could do that without, getting assault charges. So tap her on the shoulder.
Without them remote filming you and putting it on TikTok and calling you a stalker. And,
exactly. And then Joey Swole going after
the world's insane now.
It's really,
so you tap her on the shoulder.
Yeah, I tap her on the shoulder, and she turns around and says, hey, what do you want? And I said, hey, you're really good at jumping rope. Can I jump rope with you? She actually said that. She said, it's a big sidewalk. Go for it. So I'm like, all right, this is a terrible start, but whatever. So she's teaching me. We spend about half an hour. Clearly crazy chemistry. Like from the moment I met her, I was like, this is a different kind of person. Like there's this magic that some people have. I don't know if you've experienced this with your wives when you met them, but it was not, I mean, she's a beautiful woman, but it wasn't a visual thing, and it wasn't her voice. It was the chemistry. I had this raw animal attraction to this woman that I've never had to any other person. It was literally like God was like, yep, here she is. This is your girl. I'm going to make this real easy for you. We're going to fill you up with all the pheromones, and you're not going to be able to resist her. And it hasn't changed.
He ordained it, because with that pickup line,
I had no chance, right? Yeah, it was terrible.
You limped in there.
But I made the intro. That's what counts. And so
you did have the courage to at least tap her on the sholdder. That's well done.
And so
no guts, no glory.
It clearly worked out.
It did. Yeah. And so I got her email address, because I didn't even have the balls to ask her for a number. I was like, can I get your email?
All right. Was it a .yahoo, .gmail? Which one was it at?
She gave me the Gmail address, so I knew it was probably more legit. That was a good sign.
I know you guys are a little bit older than me, just a smidge. So I wanted to check that it wasn't like Hotmail or something, because then I had to roast you here.
My first email address for 10 years was thebigbomb at AOL.com.
Man.
And so I actually went to job interviews.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of people listening to this who have no idea what AOL is.
Oh, yeah, no clue, right. This is Boomerland back in the day when...
Dial-up internet. Yep. Okay, so you got her email, not even her number.
Started on that.
So how long between this exchange of she gave you her email, that things actually progressed?
It was about 6 months. We took it really slowly. I think a lot of my relationships in the past had kind of started with sexuality, and then kind of we tried to become friends and all that kind of stuff later. I think this was one of the first times that I had a serious relationship with someone that started as a friendship. And I was dating someone else at the time, long distance. And so it was I kind of knew that I was interested in Kim, but I also knew that, I was still dating someone. I was, kind of at the tail end of that relationship. So I needed to, play it cool, be good, all that kind of stuff.
Wrap that up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so we were friends for a long time, probably about 6 months. And then I realized, what am I doing? I need to end what I'm doing now, and went that direction. So when I finally told her, hey, I'm crazy about you. I love being your friend, but I don't know if I can anymore. It's just driving me insane. You're beautiful. You're amazing. We have to, we have to try this out. And she said, oh, thank God. And we hugged each other for the first time. And I felt like a bolt of lightning struck both of us. It was the most intense hug that any person has ever experienced in history. It was 6 months of just pent up, and, and she laughed and said, all right, you got to go. I said, okay, cool. Yeah. There's chemistry is a special thing. It's really cool.
That's awesome. How long did you guys date before you proposed?
We dated for about a year. Okay. We had an oops baby that we lost, and so that was probably about 3 to 6 months into dating, and so that kind of sped up the timeline a little bit. We ended up kind of saying, okay, I think she was really concerned that I was
How old were you guys at this time?
Old enough to know better. I think
Okay.
I was 31 at the time.
Okay.
And, or maybe 29, but old enough to, know that, what do they call, people who use the pull-out method as a method of contraception? They call them parents. They call them parents.
I've got exactly one child. So.
Okay, well then, so you guys are better at this than I am. Yeah. Either that or my sperm are faster swimmers. I don't know.
Maybe.
I got the Michael Phelps of.
I was going to say Michael Phelps.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we were about 15 weeks along when Kim had a miscarriage. So that was a tough time. We were excited, and I wanted her to know. I think she was initially concerned. We'd only been dating like 6 months. Once I tell him that I'm pregnant, maybe he's going to run away. That kind of thing. And so I wanted to go over the top and let her know that's not my intention. I'd love to have this baby. I want to be with you. And, I told my whole family about it, all that kind of stuff, which, made it all the more painful when we did lose the baby because, we told everybody you're kind of supposed to wait a little bit just to make sure it's viable and all that. And we kind of didn't have that luxury. And in fact,
do you mind sharing a little bit about, because there's actually something we haven't really talked yet much on the podcast is miscarriages. And it happens a lot. I think it hits men and women very differently. And I know for mothers, there's a lot of almost like feeling like they are a failure somehow. Like it's very, very, it's not just a sad thing because it's a sad thing. It's like very intertwined. So can you talk about like how that went with you guys, and if you're willing to share some of that?
I think
how like you guys got through it.
Yeah, I think one of the good things about it was I think I actually handled that pretty well in letting her know that it wasn't her fault. I think it brought us closer together in a lot of ways versus some people, it kind of tears them apart when that kind of thing happens. The challenge with it was she had a lot of those experiences. Did I do something wrong? Is my body not good enough? All these kind of irrational things that go through our heads. And I had some of those experiences as well. I went from, I'm having a baby with someone I'm not married to. This wasn't quite how I planned it. I'm really into her and I hope that we can get married eventually, but I'm not quite ready to yet. And so, although who knows, we might've done a shotgun wedding if we'll never know kind of how that would have gone down. But regardless, I think I did enough of the right things to show her that I was into the relationship, into her, and that I was serious about being a good father and being someone that would provide for her. And I think for dads who are in that situation, a lot of young fathers who are concerned, I don't want to be tied down, I'm too young, or any of that kind of stuff. If you can show that you are a decent human being, that you're willing to sacrifice and do what's necessary to be a good father and to provide, I think the vast majority of women will respond to that and will really, appreciate that. And so, it was a really painful experience. I was so excited, every week I was thinking more about it and, kind of planning all that. And so when I got that call, because it was the type of, it was one where, the miscarriage didn't happen naturally. So, the baby, the heart didn't develop fully. And so the baby was still dead, inside of, Kim's body. And so she had to have a procedure to have it removed and all that. And, I think that made it even harder for her because, you're carrying what feels like a baby, but it's not alive. And there was a lot to go through. And, I think we still carry some challenges. We talk about that as our angel baby and all that.
Was there counseling for that? Did y'all do counseling of any kind for the trauma?
We need to. That's definitely something to do in the future because it's never too late, to do some counseling. Kim's not huge on formal counseling, but I'm working on her. We're getting there to where, she'll be a little more into it. But we talked about it quite a bit, and I don't think it's an active wound, anymore as far as that goes. But that's a good reminder. That's something that, we do need to continue processing and talking about because, you never really 100% get over that. You just heal as best you can.
No, that's not a wound that just heals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks for being, candid about that very painful experience. And I'm sorry that happened to you guys. I guess just any final piece of advice, maybe that you wanted to just drive home on, first time parents expecting that if this happens to them, if you could do it over again, maybe something you would have done differently or do it all the same. What would that be?
Yeah, I just know that it's very common. My grandmother told me about it. She has 5 kids, and her first was lost to a miscarriage. And so talking to her about it really helps. The numbers, I'm going to misquote this. I think it's like 30, 40%, somewhere in that range of first babies are miscarriages. It's an incredibly high number. So you're not alone. If it does happen to you, there's nothing wrong with your body. It's just a very common thing for first time moms, for that first one not to make it through. And I think back in the day, people just didn't know, but now that we have blood tests and all this, and now you go, okay, well, the moment you're pregnant essentially. So it just becomes harder at that point because we do know so early. Know that you're not alone and talk about it. And, it's normal to feel really terrible about it. It's a baby that didn't make it. So it's okay to, feel sad about it and to wallow in some tears and have a terrible couple of months like I did. It's okay. I've forgiven myself for it. And I ate a lot of ice cream. I definitely ate my feelings at that time.
You didn't have me around to tell you put the cookie down.
Yeah, put the cookie down. Yeah, exactly.
No, but in all seriousness, I mean, any kind of grief is grief, right? Whatever the event, and talking about it and having people around you that kind of understand what you're going through is always a very helpful thing. So, whatever the event is, that's usually an important first step. And sometimes it's just like like Mason Sawyer said, right? It's just, hey, I'll just sit here with you. No advice, no nothing. They're just there with you, but that can help a lot too. So, again, appreciate you being vulnerable about that, man, and for your advice through your experience there. Obviously, this was a very shaping moment for both of you. So, how did things progress from, the initial grief stage of that, and then kind of like you said, it was a little bit of a accelerated your timeline in terms of looking at marriage. How did things progress from here?
So we moved in together, and after we lost the baby, I think Kim was again concerned. Oh, you have these crazy ideas. Maybe he's just living with me and dating me because we're going to have the baby, and now he's going to leave me. And so we had these moments where I really did my best to let her know that there's nothing wrong with her, that there was nothing wrong with me, and that we were going to have a great relationship, and eventually we would have kids. And I was here for her, and not just because of the baby and all that. So, I think once we got that out of the way, and I did a great job of explaining to her that was the case, and I genuinely let her know that's how I felt, which is easy to do when you genuinely feel that way. I was more attracted to her than ever. I don't know if you guys have had that experience. When my wife was pregnant, that's the most attracted to her that I've ever been in my life. I thought I was 16 again. It was bad. just something about like that life in your life and your wife.
I agree. Yeah, with that statement.
It's unbelievable.
It's a weird thing to try and explain to someone who's never experienced it, right? It's a very, very, very unique experience for both the husband or the father and the mother, right? Like, it's all the excitement and everything. Yeah, there's just all this intangible things going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's beautiful.
I'm really curious about something. So, when did I come into the picture in this time frame? I'm trying to remember.
So I was living with Josh at the time, and we were in that apartment. And so I don't remember. I don't think I ever told you about the miscarriage or anything. I just, I
was going to say you left that little tidbit out.
Yeah. It wasn't really something I was comfortable sharing. I was a really not a good sharer, and I'm still struggle with that to some extent. I think a lot of that comes from I am sorry. Yeah. But I think a lot of that comes from being an only child, growing up with a secret that I can't tell anyone. You can't tell people who your dad is, all this kind of stuff. I mean, I think when you grow up where like a potentially kind of important part of your life has to stay a secret, you get really good at keeping secrets and you kind of enjoy it. You're like, oh, this is my secret. I'm not going to tell people. And so, that's something I've had to unlearn, is to just let it go and just, if there's something potentially painful or uncomfortable, just let it out and have that conversation. It's going to suck for a minute. and then it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
But I think that was a bad habit. If I don't know if that's a common situation with people with single moms, but I definitely kept too many secrets for many years. And I appreciate you guys for helping me open up and just talk about stuff and, just be vulnerable and be honest, because it's so much easier. That mental and emotional energy that it takes to keep those secrets and hide your demons is exhausting. It's energy you could be using to talk about cool stuff or read books or, create. And I was using that to keep secrets and remember who I'd told that it was a nightmare. So I don't do that nearly as much anymore.
Well, they eat you up physically, right? So, past traumas do that. They have a tendency to just stick with you, and especially if you don't, go after acceptance with it, right? You don't go after it and try to heal it. So, with that said, what were some of the things growing up that you dealt with from not having your dad in the picture that you knew, like when you were having Lucas, that you wanted to prevent? Like you wanted to make sure, like what generational kind of curses or generational things that were passed down to you that dealt you blows in your life that you don't want Lucas to have? Like what were some of those things that you experienced?
So this is a simple one. I never learned how to fix anything. I had this idea in my head when I was younger, and we talked about this a little bit on the Dad How Do I episode.
Yeah.
I had this idea in my head, again, a compensation thing. I'm going to work hard, and I'm really good at math and science, and I'm very smart, and I'm going to get a great job, and I'm going to make a lot of money. And if anything breaks, I'm going to pay a handyman. That was my plan. And it's mostly worked. I still kind of do that, but that's terrible, right? I mean, that's not how men are supposed to operate. When you hire someone to do something for you, you should do it to, so that you can do something else valuable, not because you don't know how to do it. I genuinely believe that we should try our best to mostly be as self-sufficient as possible. Obviously, I depend on, other people for food and other things, to say, I mean, no man is an island, of course, but as far as basic stuff around your house, being able to fix things, all that, you never know. Maybe it's going to be a month before the handyman can show up, and I need to know how to plunge a toilet, how to change a tire, all that kind of basic stuff. And that, for better or worse, is usually a dad's role. And so my goal is to plug some of the holes in that skill set and make sure that I'm good enough at those things to teach my son. And I don't have to be great at it. I just have to be better than a 9-year-old, which he's a pretty smart kid. So that might be asking a lot. I think it's going to be around 11 or 12. And he loves tools. He loves, and that's another thing. And George, you've mentioned this before. If you're not good at something, find someone who is. And so Kim's father is incredible with his hands. He's currently rebuilding an old World War II Jeep from the 1940s. He's just this incredible mechanic. He can fix anything. He's basically the opposite of me in a lot of ways, which is really cool because I get to learn these things from him, and more importantly, so does Lucas. So, once
That's
or twice
great.
a
And
week,
you can find common ground too. Like 3 generations worth now can do something together, and
yes, exactly,
build those memories together.
Big time. And I get to learn, and I get to pretend that I know how to do this stuff when he's teaching Lucas, and I have no idea. So we're both learning together, and that's a really beautiful thing. So Brandon, that's what I would say is those basic skills. I have men in my network that can help teach me and potentially just teach Lucas directly if necessary. And I'm also going to upskill myself and make sure that I learn how to do. And I do know how to change a tire, and I know some basic things now, but I'd like to learn a lot more along those lines. And that's a healing process, right? Is knowing that I didn't pass along that inability, because it's a source of shame when all your friends, are able to fix things or do certain things and you can't. You need to learn how to do that. And I can't obviously just blame not having a dad for that. Some of that was me just not wanting to deal with it because I wanted to read a book or do something else. So that's definitely a big part of it as well.
Oh, well, you saying something about healing process made me think of a question. So, kind of going back to you and Kim losing your first baby, what was the healing process that you guys kind of practiced together? Was there anything specific that you guys did, or was that kind of just a deal with it on a day-to-day basis? Like, how did that go?
we were really patient with each other. I think we both knew that it would be hard going into it. And I didn't put any expectations on her. I didn't demand, hey, you're being crazy. You need to just be fine tomorrow. What's wrong with this? I understood that there were going to be days where she didn't really want to be touched. She just kind of felt like she needed to be alone for a little bit. And I did my best to be supportive and not get angry about that. And I think that is one benefit of being a little bit older. I think if we'd been 18 when that happened, I don't know if I would have understood that as well or had the emotional maturity to handle that. And so I'm very glad that we did meet when we were a little bit older, because with some of the challenges we went through, like her cancer and that kind of stuff, I think as a younger man, I would not have handled it as gracefully. And so I'm very glad that it worked out the way that it did. I think I met the right person, but I also met her at the right time. That was really key. So we were patient with each other. There was no demands like, oh, we need to try to have another baby immediately, any of that kind of stuff. And also we were getting married soon. We got engaged a little bit after that. And so that was a nice distraction. Like, we're going to start this new life together, and neither of us have been, in that kind of situation before. And so that was a lot to look forward to and a lot to be excited about. So that helped quite a bit in the healing process, Justin.
Yeah, that's that's a great idea too, is just find something positive to start building towards. In your case, the engagement. So you guys get married. Kind of a lot here to cover pretty quickly, because between your wife having cancer, that's a big topic, or soon to be wife having cancer, and then starting your family. So I don't know where you want to start with that, but you guys get married, and then what? Like, let's go to some of those topics if you're willing to share.
Yeah. So I was finishing my last couple classes to go to anesthesia school while I was a personal trainer, and we'd set the date about a year and a half in advance. Georgia's crazy. Some of the venues require you to book like 6 years in advance. So these girls will seriously put down like a $5,000 deposit. They don't even have a boyfriend. They're just like, all right, it's 2023. I'm going to be married by 2029. Let's book that Frost Chapel 5 years in advance. So, can you imagine going on a first date with a girl?
Wow. Like, I swear he's not lying.
All right, I got our venue
like a
booked.
month before. Hey, we're dating. Just so you know, we have to get married a month from now.
Yeah, exactly.
First date.
This is an impossible venue to get, and we have to make it happen. Yeah,
I feel like there's a country song about
it's all
that.
those Buckhead girls, man.
The Buckhead Betties. Yeah, exactly. And so we booked this beautiful, picturesque. We had a dream wedding. It was unbelievable. I'll never forget that day. It was really special. And I'm glad you were there, Justin. That was really cool to to see you guys. Yeah,
it's an honor to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the marriage happened, and then because I didn't know that I was going to get into anesthesia school and the start date on it, school started 2 days later. So drove down to Florida for orientation. Flew back, one-way ticket to Georgia, got married, and then flew back. It was a really hectic orientation. So I probably didn't. My first week of school, I wasn't all there. I kind of needed a minute to get into that, kind of study mode. And so we just gotten married. She's living in Georgia for a couple months. I'm in Florida doing school. We both kind of decided, let's move together. Let's get this started together. And so we found a way to make it work to get her to Florida, which I'm so happy about. I think if we tried to stay apart for, a year or two, we would have been fine, but what a waste, to if you have the opportunity at all possible to be together during that moment, to not do it. So we did. And I'm really happy that happened.
Right.
So, I finished school, get a great job in Missouri, and it was the month before I was supposed to take my final exam, the big one that if you fail this, you're toast, kind of thing. So study. The Kim was in the shower, felt a lump. Actually, no, I was in the shower with her. I felt a lump, and I said, "That's weird. Something's not right." And she checked on it further. And just a little aside for women, young, healthy women, a mammogram often won't catch cancer. So Kim went to her doctor. She's great about, her health. She's the reason she's still alive today, is that she was so adamant about something's not right. I need to get this looked at, because she went to her primary care doctor. They said, "You're young. Don't worry about it." She said, "Let me just get a mammogram anyways." They said, "Okay, you got to pay for it. It'll be $500, but go for it." Did the mammogram, inconclusive, didn't show anything. She said, something's still not right. And so I'm studying, I'm doing my thing. I was like, look, you're being crazy. You're fine. Don't worry about it. Boy, I'm never going to live that one down because I was not correct. And so she then did an ultrasound of the area, which showed something a little more conclusive. Something's not right. And then finally a biopsy confirmed that there was cancer there. And so she had a weird kind of cancer because often in very young women, it's aggressive, really horrible, often very, very difficult to treat. Her cancer, I mean, no cancer is good, but she had one of the better kinds that was very treatable, a little bit slower growing. And, she didn't need to have like a full mastectomy, any of that. Didn't need to have chemotherapy. We had a lot of conversations about that. And a lot of that was about being able to have children because it's much, much harder after you've had chemotherapy to have a child. And we knew at that point, all right, we definitely really want to have kids. And, that would really harm our chances to do it. So let's forego that. So
yeah.
She's 7 years, something like that, clean from cancer, doing great. God is good. Thank you for watching out for her. That's been amazing. And so that was a really tough thing. I'm, trying to take this exam and, kind of focus on school. And all I could think about is her and her health and all that. But we got through it. And she did a bunch of research. Kim is a very determined, very smart woman. Did a deep dive into all the health around it and found a bunch of studies showing that your risk of cancer recurrence is not any higher with her specific type of cancer and all that. If you have a child, you take a break from the medications and then go back on them. And so brought that evidence to her doctor who said, do you want to do this job? Because that's, good for you. You've got great evidence here. Let's talk about it. And so we figured out a plan for it. We took about 6 months where we said, okay, no medications, none of the cancer stuff, because you can't have a baby while you're on that stuff. It's severely teratogenic. It can harm the baby. And so got off of that. We were good to go, pulled the goalie, all that stuff. And Kim was supposed to take a trip to Cuba. That was the plan. And so dads, if you want to get pregnant and you're struggling, plan an amazing trip to a place that you won't be able to go to soon because it's literally embargoed, and you will get pregnant. And of course, Cuba has a Zika problem. So you can't go there if you're pregnant. And so she had to cancel her amazing once-in-a-lifetime trip to Cuba. And you know what? We wouldn't trade Lucas for anything, so it was definitely worth it. But that's how you have a baby, is you make sure that you have something you're going to miss if you get pregnant.
It's like Murphy's Law.
Murphy's Law every time.
You're like tempting it.
Yeah.
So not to make light of the situation, but I got two key takeaways from what you were just describing there. Number one is husbands feel your wife's breast consistently to make sure they don't have cancer.
Amen.
So it's for her health.
That's right.
Number two is this is actually kind of serious, is to do your own research, arm yourself with information. Because sometimes, doctors maybe they're overwhelmed or they dismiss it, whatever. People make mistakes. Like, you need to kind of advocate for yourself. So it sounds like Kim was very like, no, something's not right. I know it. And I have a family member actually had a very similar experience. They ended up having a massive tumor in their abdomen, and numerous doctors were like, you're fine, it's nothing. And then finally one doctor was like, I believe you. Let's find out. And it was like a volleyball size tumor. It was insane. So great things happen. But anyway, we'll move on from that. But so clearly you guys get pregnant and you've overcome some serious health issues with that. And there's a lot to consider, which kind of adds to the stress of it all. So I guess walk us through that process, because I think most people don't really, I don't know about most people, but a lot of people don't have that experience. I certainly didn't, right? So I'm curious to learn how much more intentional you need to be about things, and just any advice along the way for couples that are struggling with any medical concerns.
Yeah. So as far as, again, with the type of cancer that she had, we didn't have to do any kind of fertility treatments. Because breast cancer is estrogen receptor positive, excuse me, the last thing you want to do is pump your body full of estrogen hormones, which is what we use to, help with pregnancy, because it would increase your risk of cancer recurrence. So first thing first, try to do it the old fashioned way. The other thing is, thanks Lance Armstrong for helping us pay for that. We froze a bunch of her eggs. in case it didn't work the old fashioned way, we were going to, try some other things. Didn't have to do that, but it would be an option there. So those eggs are still frozen. So who knows? For future babies, we may end up going that route. And the miracles of modern science, it's really pretty amazing stuff. But as far as day-to-day health concerns, there's a couple things that strongly increase your risk of breast cancer as a woman. One's going to be consuming significant amounts of alcohol. It's a huge problem, especially if you've already had breast cancer. I hate to be, kind of a Debbie Downer about that, but it's really not a great idea to drink a lot. So that is something, we've tried to cut back on for sure. And, that your body is at risk for this kind of thing in the future. So you want to do your best to take care of your health as well as possible. Keep your weight in a good position, focus on your diet a little more. Maybe it's a wake up call. Maybe it's, someone telling you, hey, you got to fix the way you're taking care of yourself right now, because the way you're eating and the way you're not moving and all these things might be the reason that this happened. And again, you never want to blame someone for getting cancer. It's not, that their fault, but there are proven links between certain types of behavior and an increased risk of cancer. So if you've already had it, you want to make sure to reduce those risks, by taking as good care of yourself.
Mitigate where possible.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And, so, those are definitely things we kept in mind, and we're both a little more motivated to take care of ourselves and be as healthy as possible, because we're both older parents. And we want to be there for our kids. We want to be there for our grandkids. And, that's part of what we do as dads is we've kind of agreed to take care of ourselves so that we'll be there to take care of, our future generations. And as moms, it's the same way. So I think that was a big factor in, how we've approached our lives and our health, since that whole situation. Yeah.
So how did the pregnancy go? Was it relatively normal then? Or I know the birth, not so much, but this is again another topic that I think a lot of, especially dads, I think don't talk about this often, and I think it's maybe more frequent, having scares with birth, and So I know you have a lot of personal experience in that, and so if you're willing to share, I think that'd be a good. Thing to share now.
So dads, it's normal to be afraid. It's normal to cry. It's normal to feel the feelings. I've done the anesthesia for thousands of moms, and a lot of the dads cry. A lot of them panic. There's a lot of emotions. First time dads, usually the veterans that have done it, 3-4 times. It's not quite as bad, but it's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of fear. Just focus on being there for your wife. That's what you're there for. And of course, be there for your newborn and all that. It's funny though. I mean, having done thousands of these, when it's your own baby, it's different, right? So I was just as scared as any dad when we had a pregnancy that was going, pretty badly at one point. So Kim's pregnancy was relatively normal. She was sick, lost some weight, kind of the usual stuff that happens. But it went pretty well, all things considered. And then went to full term. And so they induced her labor and said, we don't want to wait too long. You're a geriatric mom. That's the worst term ever. So if you're over 35 as a mom, they call you geriatric, which they need to change. That's horrible. I'm sure some women have just walked out of the doctor's office just disgusted. I'm not geriatric. I'm 36. But so because of that, they induced the pregnancy, and she pushed for about 36 hours. She tried her best. We did every position possible, and he just didn't want to come out that way, unfortunately. So he had some problems with his heart rate. And later we found out that my wife had a placental abruption, which can be lethal to the mom and the baby. So it was a immediate stat, kind of situation, get him into the operating room and take care of him ASAP. I watched my wife turn gray. My son was purple for what felt like an hour. It was probably 2 minutes, but still, I was thinking, okay, there's going to be brain damage. There's going to be issues. This is not great. Thankfully we were at a great hospital that was used to taking care of moms in, very dire straits like this. The neonatal team jumped in and helped out, and he was pretty sick for about a month. There were some challenges afterwards, low blood sugars, temperatures weren't high enough, things like that. But we didn't actually need to be in the NICU. The standard kind of parent area had access to NG feeding tubes. So he actually was fed through his nose for the first couple of weeks. Was maybe the first week. It wasn't quite that long. So, some pretty advanced interventions that we were able to do, even not in the NICU. My wife lost like all of her blood. It was just gone. So when you see those bright red canisters fill up with just blood, doesn't matter how many times you've seen it. When it's your wife, you're not happy. That was not a good place at that point.
Yeah.
But I also
Scary,
recognize,
man. All the alarms are going off. Like it's a different kind of intense when it's your flesh and blood, on the table.
Yeah. And so I knew that she was going to be okay because I knew the team and I knew that, they knew how to take care of her, and she pulled through and she did great, but it was a scary birth. And Lucas is totally normal. Nothing wrong with him. Kids are incredibly resilient. It's amazing how often, a doctor will have to be as candid with the mom as possible and say, your baby's probably not going to be normal. My twin cousins, same way, were 23 weeks. They were ridiculously early, set the record for twins in the state of Michigan. And we're told you're not going to be normal. They might die in a couple of years. Prepare yourself for that. And of course, now Ted's going to be a flight attendant and Nick's a Marine. I mean, they're amazing kids. Nothing wrong with them, so have hope and, don't give up, because so many kids, quote unquote, beat the odds. And it's awesome to see that. So it was challenging, but the outcome was incredible, with the way everything went down. The one thing I would say is, if you're a first time mom, maybe don't do a home birth. I know it's a great experience and like it's great for a lot of people and all that, but maybe don't do a home birth. If you've had 6 and it's your 7th one, go do it at home. Do your thing. You're a pro. You're good. But my wife and my son would not be here today if we were not at a hospital. So if you have access to a nice hospital, it's, the beds are uncomfortable. It's expensive. It sucks, but go to the hospital, because they will save your life if anything goes wrong.
Yeah. We tried a home birth and had to transfer to the hospital. It got a little scary. So
Yeah.
I think I'd agree with that sentiment.
Yeah.
Were any like real stark lessons from that scary experience that have still really stuck with you and maybe shape how you show up as a husband and father today, before we kind of just move on from that?
My wife was so sick for probably a month that I was the primary caretaker for my son. And if I hadn't taken some paternal leave, I don't know, who would have. I mean, maybe her parents would have helped out, but it's not the same. So in a lot of ways, I got really close to my son really early, and it took my wife a little while. She's his favorite now. He's the one, Mom, read me bedtime stories. I don't want dad, that kind of thing. I mean, they're best friends. It's wonderful. But the first couple of months, it took him a little bit of time. I think there was a little bit of anger, and that's a totally normal, healthy thing. If you're a mom and you feel like you're a little bit angry at your child because they did this to you, you almost killed her. It's not rational, but it is normal. And so she jokes and she said she didn't have postpartum.
There's also the dump of all the endorphins and all that kind of stuff is completely it's gone now. Like there's a crash hormonally that happens as well.
And hers didn't manifest as sadness. It manifested as anger. And I don't think that's super abnormal. She laughed and she said, I had postpartum rage afterwards. And, be patient with that. Know as a dad that it's very normal for your wife to have some really intense emotions. And if she says some stuff that is mean, be patient, understand that that's a really tough thing. She literally just had a baby for you. So give her some grace, and that was a really key element, was that we learned how to handle some difficult situations there. And I think I, again, was a little bit older, had the emotional maturity to shrug that off as needed and say, hey, that's not a nice thing to say, but I forgive you and let's move on, kind of thing, versus some dads, maybe lack of sleep, just not doing well, would just lose it and say, I can't believe you just said that to me. You're the worst. And, some stuff can't be unsaid. So just know that there's a good chance that your wife might say something horrible to you a couple times, after you have the baby, and that's okay. It's very normal. Try to be forgiving and try to be understanding. And wives, same thing. Maybe your husband's on 4 hours of sleep over a week. I know, what that's like, Justin. Maybe he's a little sharp with you and says something he's going to regret later. Be patient and recognize that it is very normal from lack of sleep and not feeling well to have those challenges. Yeah. But I'm very grateful that I got to take care of my son like that. There were some things that weren't being done quite ideally for his care. And so I was able to fix that. And there's nothing that feels better than being as a dad, knowing you optimized and really helped your child do better for life. And maybe you had a special set of skills, as Liam Neeson would say, that allowed you to do that. I mean, that's a level up. That's an incredible feeling. So
just
being
to
able
clarify, yours didn't involve tracking down people across the world, though, right?
We can skip that part. Don't worry about it. Yeah, it's fine. That's for another story. Yeah, yeah, it's classified. Yeah. So yeah, I got to be there for my son, and it made us really close, and it made me appreciate more having him. Knowing that he might be our only one, and that he's my only shot. I better take good care of him. He's my legacy.
Did you guys have like a lot of family help at this time too, or was it kind of just you and Kim?
So part of the reason we moved back to Florida was that we did not. We had family that was lovely and flew in and came to see us from Michigan and Florida and Georgia and, kind of all over. But it's not the same as having someone down the street. And when I had the opportunity to come back to a place that I consider home or close to it, I grew up maybe an hour from where I'm living now. And so there's just something about the same trees and the same, kind of air and all that. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but when you grew up in a certain place, that's always going to feel like home. If you grew up in the mountains, if you go back to the mountains, it's going to feel like home. And for me, I grew up on the beach. And so when I go to the beach, I'm literally instantly at peace. It's amazing, just by that. Whereas other people, Kim's she likes the beach, but it's not like, oh my God, this is my happy place, like it is for me. I get there and I'm just, wow, thank you. I'm so glad that I'm here. It's interesting. So that's a big part of why we came back to Florida, was for family and for that support and to make sure that my mom would be able to spend more time with my son. We knew that Kim's parents were closer, and they ended up moving down pretty soon after. And so they live in the same neighborhood as we do, which I thought was going to be a little weird at first, but I absolutely love it. It's wonderful having them around. They're just a huge asset. And, that was a big part of what motivated us to do it. So if you can, as Americans, I think we talk about it's, career first, whatever it takes to make the most money and have the most successful career. And I'm learning that I think that's a mistake for a lot of us, that yes, if you leave your town where your family is, you might make more money. You might have some more opportunities, but consider the possibility that living closer to where your family is might bring you a lot more joy and happiness. And maybe having 3 kids with no family around is pretty tough. And if you are able to have some family that can help you out, if that means you won't make as much money, that might be okay. I don't know. I've seen more and more people who have kind of structured their lives around what's going to be best for their kids, what's going to make the most sense from a community perspective. And I think more of us need to do that. And so I love my job. I love my friends up there. It was a great area, but I don't regret this at all. I think having family around has made our lives significantly better.
I agree.
That's a wise word. Yeah.
It's super important. The reason being is there was a recent study that was talking about how that your social life affects your health in such a detrimental way. Like if you don't have a social life, it's like the equivalent of smoking 12 cigarettes a day to your physical health over long term. Like this is a legitimate study that just recently released. And it's like that just tells us how much tribal we are at heart, right? We have to have our community. We have to have our people. And it's so good to hear how great your mom was, just such a good mother. So, talking about that, and you talked to how she moved down there. How good of a grandmother is she to Lucas?
Oh my gosh.
I just imagine like an angel, right? Yeah.
They are thick. No, they're thick as thieves. She teaches him all these bad habits. She calls him, he calls her Gigi. And so anytime I mention Gigi, he gets his eyes lit up and he's so excited. He can't wait to see her. They just have a really special bond and relationship. It's really fun to see. I was a lot like that with my grandmother. She taught me a lot of things. My mom was kind of a hippie. My grandmother was the matriarch of the family. She was like the Queen Elizabeth, who taught me. I had terrible table manners, and my mom wasn't really worried about it. So my grandmother set me in front of a mirror and made me watch myself. And for like 2 hours, was like, you're going to learn how to eat properly at a table, and a lot of this stuff. So, and now my mom gets to be that person who passes on kind of some of that old school wisdom that we don't necessarily have, and he'll listen to her. She'll tell these stories. and his eyes, I mean, just focus, rapt, grandparents are so valuable. They just have this knowledge that we don't have, I mean, that's how communities learned back in the day, right? Before we had writing and all that, was we told stories by the fire, and our grandparents were so valuable because they were the only ones who knew about those way back times. And they were the ones who had passed that knowledge on. We still have that connection there. It's really fun to see them together. I can see the neurons in his brain just connecting, as he's with her.
Yeah.
Like, his brain is getting so big.
Yeah. And he's 4, right, at the time of this recording?
He'll be 4 in a month.
Oh,
okay.
awesome.
So he's almost 4. So
Yeah.
Still very much developing rapidly.
Yeah. He's this mini.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and another plus of moving to where you moved is you guys get to watch SpaceX launch off everything like every single day of your life. And
So jealous.
That's a pretty cool place to raise a little boy and watch rockets all the time.
That was so amazing last night.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It was like a jellyfish alien leaving the sky. I've never seen anything like that.
That was the new big Starship one, right?
This
I
was
think
the
a lot of people
Falcon
maybe
Heavy.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Falcon 9's a regular rocket.
Came back down and landed type of thing. And
so I need to look it up. I don't know. I need to research this a little more because I don't know exactly what I was looking at. I posted it and I was like, this is like stage separation. I had some actual like rocket scientists who were like, that's not what that is. I was like, okay, well, thanks. What is it? They didn't respond. Oh man. So, I don't know. I'm not a rocket scientist. It
looked really cool. That's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly.
There's like 2 places in America you can live and watch rockets frequently, and you live by one of them, right? So that's, I think, is it even 2? I don't even know.
Well, so you've got Texas. And you've got California, but they launch like 20%. Is like all the launches are happening in Florida. Like it's definitely
so. Yeah, you definitely live in a pretty good spot for that. I'm sure that's pretty easy entertainment for an almost 4-year-old boy. Just hey, let's go outside and watch the rocket.
Yeah. Oh, he loves it, and I really hope he gets into that kind of stuff. And there's one thing about schools that like keep things a little bit more local, which is cool. Is there's a lot of emphasis on STEM in this area. Because there's so many jobs available for rocket scientists and people in the military and all that kind of stuff. So my hope is that he will gravitate towards that a little bit and, maybe look into, some of that kind of stuff. So Lucas, if you're listening to this in 20 years and you're a rocket scientist, thanks, buddy. Good job.
Astronaut.
So you can live vicariously through him.
Exactly. Yeah. He's going to be too tall to be an astronaut. That's not going to work. So he's got to be the scientist behind it. Yeah.
He's a big kid already. So
he's beefy. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, Dustin, thanks for walking through your story so far. We're going to break here for part 1, and we'll come back for part 2, and we'll dive into a little bit more of lessons learned and advice and some things like that. All right.
Dun, dun, dun.
So we'll see. Yep. Here we go. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Present Fathers Podcast. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify to catch all of our amazing episodes. We will see you in the next one.